Admiral Castril Orn of the Galactic Confederation paced the polished floor of the War Council chamber. His scaled fingers twitched nervously against the ceremonial blade at his hip, a habit developed over 4 centuries of military service. Before him, the holographic display showed what remained of the Confederation's Third Fleet, scattered debris fields where proud vessels once patrolled. "The Void Collective has broken through the Arcturus barrier," announced Commander Lixis, her crystalline form refracting light across the chamber walls. 17 systems lost in 6 cycles. Our predictive models give us less than a standard. Year before total collapse, the council chamber erupted in overlapping voices, some digital, some organic, all desperate. Species that had been mortal enemies only decades ago now huddled together in existential panic. "We need the humans," Castril finally said. The chamber fell silent. Protocol Officer Thais Ma rose from her seat, fur bristling with indignation. "Admiral, may I remind you that bringing humans into this conflict would violate Galactic Treaty 7291B, which they themselves insisted upon." "I'm well aware of the treaty," Castril replied. "I was there when they signed it." Few in the Confederation remembered the War of Unification. Fewer still understood why, after helping forge the Confederation, humanity had withdrawn from galactic affairs, limiting their involvement to cultural exchange and restricted trade. Their only demand: never again would humans be asked to fight in wars not of their making. The humans lacked the numbers to make a difference anyway, argued General Phobos, the mechanical grinding of his exoskeleton punctuating each syllable. Their home system holds barely 20 billion souls, insignificant compared to the trillions in the Confederation. Castril's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Numbers were never what made humans dangerous, General." He approached the central dais and activated an archival holo, footage from the Battle of Proximal 6, the final conflict of the Unification War. The assembled council members watched in silence as a small fleet of primitive human vessels threw themselves against the overwhelming forces of the hegemony. What followed defied conventional military logic. Humans fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness, each defeat seemingly fueling greater resistance rather than submission. "We've spent centuries evolving beyond our violent pasts," Castril continued. "We've engineered ourselves for harmony, longevity, and cooperation. Humans did not. They accepted their nature and harnessed it." "I've studied their history," Lixis interjected. "They spent millennia fighting themselves before they ever met another intelligent species. Their entire civilization is built on the ashes of their own wars." Tisma shuddered visibly, "which is precisely why they cannot be trusted on the battlefield." "No," Castril corrected. "It's why they must be our last hope. The Void Collective doesn't fight like us. It consumes. Negotiation is impossible. Surrender means extinction. Humans understand this kind of enemy." The Admiral gestured to a communications officer who reluctantly opened a channel that hadn't been used in over a century. "This is Admiral Castril Orn of the Galactic Confederation, transmitting to Earth Central Command, in accordance with emergency provisions of Treaty 7291B, Section 17. We formally request human military intervention against an imminent threat to galactic civilization." Castril paused, then added more softly, "We remember why you left the battlefield. Now we need you to remember how to fight." 3 agonizing minutes passed before a response came. Simple text against a black background. "Request received. Representative. En route. Coordinates required for rendezvous." The council erupted once more, but Castril felt a strange relief. The humans were coming. May the stars help their enemies. The Confederation flagship Eternal Dawn hung in orbit around Nexus Station, the massive diplomatic hub that served as the Confederation's political center. Admiral Castril stood at the observation deck, watching the approaching human vessel with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Human ships had once been crude, utilitarian constructs, all function with little aesthetic consideration. This vessel, however, moved with uncanny grace despite its compact size. No visible propulsion, no energy signature their sensors could detect. In the centuries since humanity's self-imposed isolation, they had clearly advanced far beyond Confederation technology. "They call it the Atonement," said Lixis, consulting her data feed. "Curious name for a diplomatic vessel." "Perhaps not diplomatic," Castriel replied softly. "The docking procedure took precisely 7 minutes, flawless and without communication. When the airlock cycled open, only a single human emerged. She, Castriel was reasonably sure this human presented as female, stood, shorter than most humans he remembered. Her dark skin contrasted with prematurely white hair, cropped close to the scalp. Most striking were her eyes. One natural brown, the other a cybernetic replacement, glowing with subtle blue light. She wore simple grey clothing with no insignia or rank, but carried herself with unmistakable authority. "Admiral Castriel Orn," she stated, rather than asked. "I am Imara Adebayo, Warkeeper for the United Terran Systems." Castriel performed the traditional greeting gesture of his species. "Warkeeper? I'm not familiar with this title." "That's because it didn't exist when we last spoke with the Confederation," Imara replied. "After the treaty, humanity needed to compartmentalize our nature. Some of us keep the peace. Others, a very select few, keep the war." Lixis stepped forward, her crystalline form shimmering with cautious light patterns. "We expected a diplomatic delegation, perhaps military advisors." Imara's expression remained neutral. "You invoked Section 17. That's not a call for diplomats." She followed them through the corridor toward the war room, drawing curious and frightened glances from the crew. Many had never seen a human in person before, knowing them only from historical records and entertainment broadcasts. "Your message mentioned the Void Collective," Imara continued. "Our intelligence networks have been tracking their expansion. We hoped they would remain beyond the galactic rim." Castriel exchanged a surprised look with Lixis. "You knew about them? Why didn't you warn us?" "Treaty restrictions," Imara answered simply. "We provide information only when directly asked." "You didn't ask." The war room fell silent as they entered. 24 representatives from the most powerful Confederation worlds rose from their seats, regarding the human with expressions ranging from hope to undisguised distrust. Imara took in the holographic display of Confederation space, studying the encroaching darkness that represented Void Collective territory. Without invitation, she approached the tactical display and interfaced with it using her cybernetic eye, manipulating the data with subtle eye movements. "You've lost more territory than you realize," she stated flatly. "These systems aren't just occupied, they're being converted." Protocol Officer Tismar bristled. "That's classified information. How could you possibly—" "We have our ways," Imara interrupted. "And before you ask, yes, we've been watching. Humanity may have left the battlefield, but we never stopped preparing for war." "Will you help us?" Castriel asked directly. Imara turned to face the assembled. "In council, I need to be clear. You're not asking for advisors or tactical support. Section 17 requests direct military intervention. If I recommend action and Earth Central agrees, you get humans, unrestricted, on your battlefields again." A murmur ran through the assembled officials. "Do you understand what that means?" Imara continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "There were reasons we were banned from galactic warfare, reasons we agreed to the ban." General Phobos stepped forward, mechanical limbs whirring. "We face extinction. Whatever risk humans pose pales in comparison." Imara's cybernetic eye pulsed briefly. "Very well. I'll need full tactical data, access to your military command structure, and a secure channel to Earth Central." I have 72 hours to make my assessment before recommending intervention. As the council dispersed to gather the requested information, Castril remained behind with the human. May I ask a personal question, Warkeeper? Imara nodded once. Why did they send just you? Her expression remained impassive, but something ancient and terrible flickered behind her eyes. Admiral, when it comes to war, one human is quite enough to start with. 3 days into Imara's assessment, the Void Collective struck again. The border colony of Proxima Centauri fell silent, all communication ceasing within hours. By the time the Emergency Council convened, 3 neighboring systems had gone dark. Imara stood at the center of the war room, surrounded by frantic Confederation officials. Her posture remained calm, almost unnaturally still, as chaotic reports flooded in. The defensive line at Rigel has collapsed, reported Commander Lixis. Evacuation transports are being overwhelmed. General Phobos slammed his mechanical fist against the table. Where are your reinforcements, human? Your 72 hours expired this morning. My assessment continues, Imara replied evenly. Earth. Central required additional information. People are dying, Protocol Officer Tismar cried out, fur standing on end with distress. What more does Earth need to know? Instead of answering, Imara activated her wrist console. A holographic display materialized, showing a 3-dimensional model of what appeared to be a massive, organic-mechanical hybrid structure. This is what your sensors failed to detect at the heart of Void Collective territory, she said. Our deep space probes identified it 6 months ago. We believe it's their central consciousness, a hive mind coordinator. Admiral Castril leaned forward, studying the strange construction. How could our scanners miss something of this magnitude? Because you were looking for ships, fleets, conventional military assets, Imara explained. The Void doesn't think like you do. It doesn't fight like you do. And that's precisely why conventional Confederation forces will continue to fail against it. Then what do you propose? Demanded Castril. Operation Prometheus. Imara's cybernetic eye pulsed as she uploaded a tactical plan to the central display. A specialized human strike force targeting the central consciousness directly. The assembled officials stared at the complex battle plan with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. This is suicide, General Phobos finally declared. No fleet could penetrate that deep into Void territory. Not a fleet, Imara corrected. One ship, the Atonement. Lixis's crystalline form dimmed slightly. One ship cannot... The Atonement isn't just a diplomatic vessel, Imara interrupted. It's a prototype human warship designed specifically for high-risk infiltration missions. Cloaking technology beyond anything the Confederation has developed, biological countermeasures against Void detection systems and... She paused. Specialized human personnel. What kind of specialized personnel? Castril asked, suspicion evident in his voice. Imara's expression changed subtly, the first real emotion she had displayed since arriving. The kind of humans that exemplify why we were banned from the battlefield in the first place. Hours later, after the Council had reluctantly approved her plan, Imara stood alone, with Admiral Castril on the observation deck. Below them, the Atonement was being prepared for departure, Confederation engineers working alongside the small human crew that had emerged from the ship's previously sealed compartments. There's something you aren't telling us, Castril said. Not a question, but a statement. Imara nodded slowly. The crew of the Atonement, they're not just soldiers. What are they? We call them the Unbound, she replied softly. Volunteers, who undergo a procedure that removes the neurological safeguards all modern humans have integrated into their genetic code, the evolutionary brakes that prevent us from accessing our full capacity for violence. Castril's scales darkened with shock. You deliberately make your own people more dangerous. Only those who choose it, and only when absolutely necessary. Imara's organic eye fixed on the distant stars. Remember, Admiral, humans weren't banned from galactic warfare because we lost too often. We were banned because of what victory cost everyone else. As she turned to leave, Castril called after her. You speak as if you know firsthand. Imara paused at the doorway. My ship leaves in 6 hours, Admiral. I suggest you prepare your forces for what comes after, whether we succeed or fail. Only as she disappeared down the corridor did Castril realize she hadn't denied his implicit question. Captain Orion Makari stood in the command center of the Atonement, mapping final approach vectors with his neural interface. Around him, 11 other humans worked in focused silence, each connected to the ship's systems through similar neural links. No verbal commands were necessary. Thought traveled faster than sound. Imara entered, and the atmosphere shifted subtly. The crew didn't salute. The Unbound observed few military formalities, but their respect was evident in the way they yielded space to her. Final preparations are complete, Orion reported. His dark features were accentuated by a network of faint silver lines beneath his skin, neural enhancement pathways. Prometheus protocol is live. Imara nodded. Status report. Talon is in position, replied a woman with intricate circuit-like tattoos visible along her temples. This was Lieutenant Vega Nightshade, tactical specialist. Breach team is prepped. Medical. Imara asked. Dr. Elias Forge looked up from his station, eyes unnaturally green against pale skin. Combat stims distributed. Resurrection protocols standing by. Imara's brow furrowed slightly at this. Casualty projections? Total, Elias answered without emotion. The mission parameters accept nothing less. The Unbound had always understood their missions were one-way journeys. What made them truly dangerous wasn't just their willingness to die, but their ability to function at peak capacity with that knowledge. Admiral Castril and Commander Lixis arrived at the airlock for the formal departure. They found the human crew unlike any soldiers they had encountered before. No dress uniforms, no ceremonial weapons, just functional combat gear and eyes that seemed somehow both empty and too full. The Confederation owes you a debt we cannot repay, Castril began. Then don't try, Orion replied flatly. Just ensure our sacrifice means something. Lixis stepped forward, the light patterns across her crystalline form conveying deep concern. There must be another way. Our scientists could develop... Your scientists have had decades, interrupted Vega. We have hours. Imara gestured for the Confederation representatives to follow her to a private chamber. Once sealed inside, she removed a small device from her wrist and activated it, creating a security field. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room, she began. The official mission parameters given to your council are incomplete. Castril's scales darkened. You deceived us? I protected you, Imara corrected. Operation Prometheus isn't just about destroying the void consciousness. It's about deploying the Hellfire Protocol. Hellfire? Lixis echoed. A weaponized variant of human aggression, engineered at the molecular level, Imara explained. The Unbound don't just pilot. The Atonement, they are the weapon. Understanding dawned slowly on Castril's face. You're going to infect the Void Collective with humanity? In a manner of speaking, Imara confirmed. The Void functions as a perfect hive mind, every part connected to the whole. We'll exploit that. Once the Unbound breach the central consciousness, they'll release a contagion that spreads human aggression, territorialism, and individualism throughout the collective. You'll tear it apart from within, Lixis whispered. The Void will destroy itself fighting internal battles, Imara continued. But there's a cost. The blast radius is significant. You need to withdraw all forces at least 3 light years from our target coordinates. That's abandoning dozens of systems, Castril protested. Those systems are already lost, Imara replied coldly. The question now is whether you want to lose everything. As they returned to the main deck, the Unbound were completing final preparations. Orion approached Imara with a small metallic case. It's time, Warkeeper, he said, opening the case to reveal a neural inhibitor removal device. Imara nodded once, removed her uniform jacket and knelt before her crew. Initiate final protocol. Orion placed the device at the base of her skull. Captain Imara Adebayo, Unbound Prime, returning to duty. As the device activated, Imara's cybernetic eye flared brilliant blue. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Station, she smiled, an expression that sent involuntary shivers through the watching Confederation officers. Now, she said, her voice somehow deeper, we remind the galaxy why humans were banned from the battlefield. The Atonement slipped through space like a shadow between stars. Conventional propulsion had been shut down hours ago. The ship now moved using gravitational manipulation technology that left no energy signature. Inside, the 12 Unbound had entered battle trance, a neurochemical state that heightened their aggression while maintaining tactical cognition. Void perimeter in 60 seconds, announced Vega, her voice unnaturally calm despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Captain Orion's fingers danced across holographic controls. Stealth systems at maximum, shifting to biological propulsion. The Atonement shuddered slightly as it transitioned power sources. Deep within the ship's core, vat-grown human nervous tissue, cloned from the Unbound themselves, pulsed with electrical activity, guiding the vessel through space using thought patterns the Void couldn't detect. Imara stood at the forward observation. Port, her mismatched eyes fixed on the approaching darkness. The Void Collective didn't build ships in the conventional sense. Their vessels were extensions of themselves, writhing masses of biomechanical matter that consumed everything they touched. They know we're coming, she stated. Dr. Elias checked. His readings. Impossible. Our signature is masked. Not our signature, Imara clarified. Our intent. The Void feels threat, the way we feel heat. As if confirming her words, the darkness ahead seemed to coalesce, forming a barrier of intertwined Void constructs. The Atonement adjusted course, diving beneath the formation. We won't breach their defenses this way, Orion observed. We need a distraction. Imara nodded once. Deploy the Valkyries. From the ship's ventral bay, 6 small capsules ejected silently into space. Each contained a fragment of unbound neural tissue connected to a miniature propulsion system, essentially thinking missiles programmed with pure aggression. As they activated, the Valkyries shot toward the Void constructs, broadcasting human rage across all frequencies. The effect was immediate. The Void constructs writhed and twisted toward the new threats, allowing the Atonement to slip past the defensive line. Inside the ship, Vega monitored the Valkyries' progress. They've engaged. Survival time, 3 minutes maximum. They don't need to survive, Imara replied. Just distract. The Atonement plunged deeper into Void territory, navigating a labyrinth of living structures. With each passing minute, the darkness grew more complete until the ship's sensors relied entirely on measuring the absence of energy rather than its presence. Central consciousness approaching, Orion announced, activating final approach sequence. The crew strapped themselves into modified acceleration couches as the ship's biological core pulsed with increased activity. What came next would push the vessel beyond its design limitations. Breach team, Imara called. Prepare for deployment. 4 of the Unbound, Vega included, moved to the central deployment chamber. Unlike conventional EVA suits, their gear, consisted of a second skin of reactive material that adapted to environmental conditions. Each carried a specialized weapon, not guns, but delivery systems for the Hellfire contagion. Hull breach in 3, 2, 1. The Atonement shuddered violently as it crashed through the outer membrane of the Void's central consciousness. Alarms blared as atmosphere vented from multiple compartments. The breach team launched immediately, propelling themselves into the alien environment. What they found defied description. The interior of the Void consciousness was neither machine nor organism, but something beyond both. A hyperdimensional space where thought became matter and matter conveyed thought. Connection established, Vega reported through the neural link. It's aware of us. On the bridge, Imara monitored the team's vital signs. Deploy Hellfire. All vectors. The breach team moved deeper into the consciousness, fighting against physical laws that seemed to shift with each movement. Around them, the Void began to respond, not with weapons, but with assimilation attempts. Dark tendrils reached for the humans, seeking to absorb rather than destroy. They're trying to incorporate us, came Vega's strained voice. The Void wants to understand us. That's their mistake, Imara replied. Initiate final sequence. Deep within the Void consciousness, the breach team formed a precise geometric pattern. Each Unbound activated their Hellfire delivery system, injecting engineered human aggression directly into the Void's neural network. On the Atonement's bridge, monitors flared with activity as the contagion spread. The Void consciousness registered the intrusion not as an attack, but as new information, absorbing the human aggression as valuable data. It's working, Orion reported, watching the spreading infection. The Void is fracturing. Around them, the massive structure began to convulse as competing impulses fought for dominance. The perfect unity of the collective mind shattered as individual components adopted human characteristics: territoriality, competition, self-preservation. Breach team status, Imara demanded. Silence answered her question. The neural links had gone dead. They've been assimilated, Dr. Elias confirmed grimly, but they completed their mission. Prepare for extraction, Imara ordered. We have 5 minutes before critical collapse. As the Atonement struggled to free itself from the dying consciousness, Imara stared into the writhing darkness around them. For a brief moment, she thought she saw human faces forming in the Void, Vega and the others. Their consciousnesses now part of the thing they had come to destroy. They're not just dying, she whispered. They're learning what it means to be human. 3 weeks after Operation Prometheus, Admiral Castril stood before the Confederation Council, delivering his final report. The massive chamber was filled beyond capacity. Representatives from every world wanted to witness this historic session. The Void Collective has completely withdrawn from Confederation space, Castril announced. Long-range scans show intense energy discharges throughout their former territory, evidence of internal conflict on a massive scale. Holographic displays showed the retreating darkness, systems reappearing on star charts as the Void abandoned its conquests. What had taken months to consume was surrendered in days. The human strategy worked exactly as Warkeeper Adebayo predicted, Castril continued. By introducing human aggression into the collective consciousness, they turned a unified enemy into warring factions. Protocol Officer Tismar leaned forward, fur rippling with concern. And what of the human strike team, the Atonement? Castril's scales darkened, a sign of mourning among his species. The Atonement was destroyed during extraction. All hands lost. A respectful silence fell over the chamber. Even those who had most strongly opposed human involvement recognized the sacrifice. Commander Lixis rose, her crystalline form casting prismatic light across the chamber. We should memorialize their actions, Without the humans, no, Castriel interrupted firmly. Per the final instructions of Warkeeper Adebayo, Operation Prometheus is to remain classified. No official record, no memorials. Confused murmurs filled the chamber. General Phobos voiced what many were thinking. They saved the Confederation. Why would they refuse recognition? Because, came a voice from the chamber entrance, we don't want you to remember what we're capable of. The assembly turned as one, to see a tall human male striding confidently down the central aisle. Unlike Imara's understated presence, this human commanded attention. Aristocratic features, silver-streaked black hair, and eyes that held both wisdom and warning. Ambassador Tarek Osiris, he announced, representative of Earth Central Command, Castriel, performed a formal greeting. Ambassador, we understood all humans involved in Operation Prometheus were lost. They were, Tarek confirmed grimly. I am here to discuss what happens next. Within hours, the council chamber had been cleared of all but the highest-ranking officials. Ambassador Tarek stood at the center, activating a holographic display that showed the current state of former Void territory. The good news is that the Void Collective no longer threatens the Confederation, he began. The bad news is what's replacing it. The display zoomed in on several regions where Void structures had been repurposed. No longer the chaotic biomechanical masses of before, but organized, militarized constructs with distinctly human design influences. We called it the Hellfire Protocol, Tarek explained, a weaponized form of human aggression, territorialism, and innovation. It worked better than anticipated. The Void entities didn't just fight each other, they evolved. Evolved how? Asked Lixis, her crystalline form dimming with concern. They're becoming more like us, Tarek said simply. The unbound team that deployed the contagion was assimilated into the collective consciousness. Their memories, skills, and instincts are now being expressed through Void biology. The implications stunned the assembly into silence. The breach team wasn't just delivering a weapon, Castriel realized. They were the weapon, Tarek nodded. Captain Adebayo knew this was the likely outcome. The Unbound volunteered with full knowledge that their consciousness would live on, fragmented across 1 million Void entities. He manipulated the display to show a particular structure at the edge of former Void space, a massive construct that bore unmistakable resemblance to ancient human warships. We believe this contains what remains of Captain Adebayo herself, Tarek continued. Scans detect communication attempts on frequencies used exclusively by Earth Central Command. She's trying to contact you? General Phobos asked. Not exactly, Tarek replied. She's warning us. The Void-human hybrids are establishing territories, developing technologies, and beginning to explore. They possess the Void's adaptive capabilities, combined with human innovation and aggression. You've created a new enemy, Tismar whispered in horror. No, Tarek corrected. We've created a new species, one that understands both human and Void perspectives, one that might ultimately serve as a bridge between us. He displayed a final image, a captured transmission from the Adebayo construct. It showed a humanoid figure composed of swirling dark matter, with one normal eye and one glowing blue, just like Imara's. This is why humans were banned from the battlefield, Tarek said softly. Not because we destroy our enemies, but because we transform them. War for humans has never been about annihilation. It's about change, violent, terrible change, but change that carries the seeds of something new. Admiral Castriel stared at the image. What does Earth Central Command recommend? First, the Confederation must honor Treaty 7291B completely. No more calls for human military intervention, no matter the crisis. Second, open diplomatic channels with the emerging Void human entities. And third, Tarek's expression grew stern. Remember why you feared us in the first place. As the ambassador prepared to depart for Earth, Castril accompanied him to the docking bay. One question remained unanswered. The Unbound. Castril began hesitantly. Were they truly volunteers, knowing what would happen to them? Tarek stopped walking, his expression softening slightly. Admiral, there's something you should understand about humans. Our greatest strength isn't our capacity for violence, it's our willingness to sacrifice ourselves for others. The Unbound knew exactly what awaited them, an eternity of consciousness, fragmented across an alien collective, forever changing it from within. That sounds like hell, Castril observed. Perhaps, Tarek acknowledged, or perhaps it's evolution. Either way, it's very human. As the ambassador's ship departed, Castril looked out at the stars, wondering which distant points of light now harbored consciousness that was neither fully human nor fully void, but something new entirely. Something born of war, but perhaps, just perhaps, destined for peace. In the darkness between stars, the beings once called the Void Collective were learning what it meant to be individuals, and somewhere among them, the consciousness that had once been Captain Imara Adebayo watched over her new children with a mother's fierce protection and a warrior's vigilance. The battlefield had transformed both the victor and the vanquished. And in that transformation lay humanity's most terrible and wonderful legacy.